Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agency recommends the commission to approve a budget expansion of $40,000 for FY17. This is for the purchase of prescribed burn and control equipment, supplies, and tools. The money would be a non-federal match is being provided by the state chapter of the National Wild Turkey Federation, $10,000 to be matched by PR funds, $30,000, so there are no licensed dollars that are involved with this.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Is there any questions from the committee? Any questions? Yes.
We use our staff to do prescribed burns, with our private lands and all this.
Correct. Our state forest program leaders working with the agency staff across the state regarding needs, so it could be used. Some of it may go to private lands or foresters or WMA managers.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the public? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Against? Okay. Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee recommends the budget expansion for FY17 for the fire equipment and supplies of $40,000 for the National Wildlife Turkey Federation grant.
Thank you, Chairman Watson. I'm receiving that in the form of a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Cox. Any further discussion? Any comments from the public or staff? Hearing none, all in favor of the budget expansion for fire equipment and supplies in the amount of $40,000 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The budget expansion related to the National Wildlife Turkey Federation grant is approved. Chairman Watson.
Thank you. Colonel Ryder?
Thank you, Commissioner Watson. If the commission will remember, many of you were there for the presentation on the CAD system that we had in October in Knoxville. We had both a demonstration of the system and also a Georgia DNR person that utilized the system. So I'm here today to request an expansion for a CAD system, and I'll keep it to 5 bullet points. And the first one being officer safety, consolidation of systems, documentable accountability of calls for services, query and data analysis, and mobile forms. And I'll be glad to get into depth on that if anybody has any questions. So I'm asking for $1 million for that system.
Okay. Do I hear a motion? Okay. Second? Okay. Do I now?
I didn't know who got the first.
Got a motion now. Any questions from the committee? Great. Any questions from the public? I'd like to say before you vote that Cape Taylor was very instrumental in putting together this system for us, and of course he was not able to be here today, and we really appreciate his efforts towards this, and that this is an extremely important system for us, to, especially what you referred to in Gatlinburg, being able to talk amongst the agencies and all, allowed us to do that, and this will even enhance that. So with that said, since there's no more questions, do I have a motion from the committee? Well, I do, so we're going to go to vote. All for it, say aye. Aye. Against? No against? Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee recommends the budget expansion for FY17 for the computer-assisted dispatch and reporting systems for $1 million.
Thank you, Chairman Watson. I'll receive that in the form of a motion. That was a pretty deep breath there to get that one out.
Oh, it was.
Do I have a second to this?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Bledsoe. I'm going to speak to this very briefly. It is a significant amount, and I do not want, for the sake of the public, to think that this was just something that's loosely approved. In fact, this particular component of our communication system was proposed 2 years ago when we did the original budget expansion of, I believe, Darren, $7 million.
I wasn't going to go there, Chairman.
I'm going there because I'm the one, and after our discussion, I think we both agreed that upon reflection, one, we had budget issues at that time, but second, there was enough transition associated with our going to this new communication system that needed to have some time to get under our belt. And in fact, our staff has worked very hard at this. Compounding the need for this right now is the fact that what we have been using as a CAD system is what I would call home brewed. And this expenditure is significantly less than if we go back to our staff and ask them to redevelop a program. It is a significant component in our officer safety. We know where our officers are 24/7. If the emergency button is hit, we know who to dispatch because we know where they are. In addition to this, the reporting feature gives the public and the legislature, which they have said at times, what we ought to give them, and that is accountability. And so that information will be there. It is readily accessible. I say all this to say I wholeheartedly support this. I wholeheartedly support the timing of this. It is the right thing to do, and I am proud of our agency and the Budget Committee. And Dr. Cook, your efforts in this. The fiscal responsibility that all of these folks have shown is exemplary. And I think that's what should be expected, and by golly, it's been practiced. Is there any additional comments from the commission? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, all in favor of a budget expansion in the amount of $1 million, 30% of which will come from the boating reserve funding, 70% from the wildlife reserve, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The budget expansion for fiscal year 17 in the amount of $1 million for computer-aided dispatch and reporting systems is approved. Chairman Watson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director, thank you. Director Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also asking for a budget expansion of $100,000 to the current year budget. It is all licensed dollars, but just a couple of explanations about it. We had talked with you some time ago about a Weekend for Wildlife, which is a fundraising event that the agency would like to emulate the state of Georgia and their efforts. We've had some planning and that we had to postpone and weren't able to go forward with it, but this $100,000 would actually be to establish a contract to the Wildlife Resources Foundation, who would then hire a person to coordinate those events for us. We're fortunate enough, I think, that we will have a person that would come on board that has lots of background in that, and even though this is $100,000 in licensed dollars, I fully expect it to not only be revenue neutral, that will be revenue positive. I have no doubts that this person will be able to bring in more than that $100,000 in revenue in the very first year. And the state of Georgia now brings in about $1 million in their weekend. I don't think we'll be there for a few years, but I think this puts us on our way. So the request is for $100,000 in the current year budget.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion, a first and a second. Any questions from the committee or comments?
I've got a question, and I apologize for not asking you before the meeting. Is this $100,000 possibly available from the foundation?
Not yet. In the future, I think that it'll self-sustain, but for this particular year, no, sir, they don't have the funding to do that.
Director, being asked the question of a date when this person would come on board and start.
I'm sorry,
They're asking for a date, question.
we'll have to establish a contract, and until we establish the contract, which we expect to take 4 to 6 weeks, we won't be able to make formal offers to anybody, but we have an assurance of the people we have talked to, from the folks that we have asked to interview for that position, that the person selected would be able to take over almost immediately on the close of the contract.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Okay. With that, all for it, say aye. Aye. Against? Okay, all passes. Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee recommends budget expansion FY17, Weekend for Wildlife, $100,000 to the Wildlife Resource Foundation.
Chairman Watson, thank you. We got to get some enthusiasm up here. I'm sensing that we're dragging a little bit. I'm going to take that in the form of a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Ripley. Well done. Is there any other discussion or enthusiasm from the commission on this subject? Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none. All in favor of this budget expansion indicate by saying aye. Aye. There you go. Any opposed? The ayes enthusiastically support the budget expansion for FY17 for the weekend for wildlife coordinator in the amount of $100,000. Director Watson, or Commissioner Watson.
Thank you.
Ken Tarkin, will you please come on down?
Yes, sir, I am here and ready. I'm the last one in between, I guess, you and the door, so I'll make this very, very quick. We do have a 3-page financial statement in your book. I'm reporting through the month of September, with the exception of the investments, and that'll be through the month of October. In the first page, at the top of the page, we've detailed the boating fund, and we're almost 20% above collections of where we were at this point in time last year. And the expense is approximately 20% of the annual budget or allotment. The middle of the page details the wildlife fund. We're approximately 11% behind where we were at this point in time last year, but as you recall, the 53rd weekly deposit went in last fiscal year. So that would bring us close to even. Our expenses for the year are 16.5% of the annual allotment, and the two endowments detailed at the bottom of the page. The Watchable has approximately $46,000 that's eligible to be transferred to the Wildlife Fund. The Lifetime Sportsman Endowment has almost $45 million balance. On the second page, top of the page is the Wetlands Acquisition Fund. We now have $8.1 million balance in it. We've zeroed the maintenance fund out as we usually do, and the compensation fund has $861,000 as a balance. On the third page, we have the October's endowment earnings. It shows approximately 2.8% since inception. I will tell you, however, we do have November's. Because of timing, I wasn't able to include it in here. November went down significantly. That 2.8% is now 0.74, but that's what we would have expected over the course of the investment of 20 and 30 years to have ups and downs. Are there any questions or comments?
Any?
Do you know how many Type 01 licenses we sold last year?
No, sir. Alicia probably will. Do you know how many? Putting you on the spot? 800,000? Does that sound good?
I wonder what percentage of the total lifetime licenses are now.
What percent the lifetime are of the Type 01?
We've got 121,727 lifetime licenses.
What percent that is?
What percentage is that?
I can find it for
The
you.
total, just wondering.
I can-
Like it's gonna be 15%.
I can get that for you.
With that, I'd like to make a statement again. We've talked about this several times, and other commissioners have brought it to my attention too, is that we need to look at this lifetime license, and we need, that number will actually show us, will probably be a very concerning number to us, because if it isn't the 15%, it's creeping up, and that's getting to where it's going to affect us, where eventually all we will have will be lifetime license and not have enough revenue to continue the way we're operating. Because just
Do you want me to show that as a line item on the?
It would be good. I'd like to see
Okay.
that. Because also we'd be able to see this thing is, as Commissioner Cox brought out, we're selling about 700 of these things a month. So in a year's time, it's a considerable amount of recurring revenue that we're losing.
I can show a percent to total of this, of what we sold in each, using last year as a I guess as a benchmark or a baseline, if that's okay.
It would also be interesting to know each year, because I think this 16 years, 15 or 16 years is how long it's been sold, how many each year or participants or potential participants are not buying licenses each year. So the first year was available, those people do not have to buy licenses anymore. And it's gonna continue to get bigger and bigger every year. If the-
Okay, so you want to-
$200 license, $300 child license, in 16 years, if most of them are children's licenses, those are all gonna start, you know, taken away
Okay.
from our savings.
How many are eligible to hunt that possess a lifetime license in relation to how many have been sold of type 01?
That's the real number. Every
Okay.
year, we get more and more that don't have to, it
Sure.
started probably this year or last year.
I don't know if this, I know it's related, I don't know if it's exactly what Bill's, saying, but there are also, you know, every time someone buys a license, there's a certain number of years where they're not utilizing, they're not hunting or fishing or participating in any way, and I think you could probably draw some conclusions from folks tagging in and, you know, with big game, but I don't know how you would actually know the universe of folks who have them but aren't participating in all. And if that's possible to know, I think that would be helpful too. To know how many folks who've got lifetime licenses are actually utilizing.
I'll ask Barry, do we have that?
We do not have that. It's very difficult to get at. You
Would think
basically
so.
have to do some kind of a survey of those people, and that costs tens of thousands of dollars to get to enough people that you actually have a good figure. You know, it can be found out, but it may not be worth the price of finding out.
Just to gently push back a little bit, I think it could be interesting, especially since we have all of this, we've got all the lifetime license numbers and we've got a lot of information via email. I'm wondering even if it's a Survey Monkey, knowing that it's not going to be solid data like our researchers would want it to be. But I do wonder about that, and certainly I think we could draw conclusions about the first 14 years of a person's life, what that number is into the agency. You know, they're not clear conclusions, but I think they would be interesting, and I think Commissioner Watson's really trying to get at the scope of impact on the agency. I think it's significant, but there are two sides, two ends of the utilization on that. And I'd love for us to try to get it without having to get UT to come in with a massive study.
Okay.
I took that in the form of a fair request. If we could follow up on that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Chairman Watson, thank you. Are there any comments from the commission as we close this out? Commissioner Watson?
I would just like to thank the fellow commissioners for the nice Christmas gifts.
Indeed.
I'd like to thank the agency for this gift as well.
The iPads?
Yes, the iPad. I don't plan on giving mine back. I don't know if that's an issue. So, while we're expanding budgets, I'm just gonna tell you now, probably gonna keep it, so.
I think Vice Chair Woodson had a great comment. I want to see the person who tries to take it from him. That's,
There's been several here today that probably could do that pretty handily, so.
are there any other
A lot
comments?
of badges.
Director Carter? Oh, I'm sorry. Big Bear.
I just want to follow up on Commissioner Bledsoe and express our appreciation for the department, and Commissioner Templeton on being responsive to the needs of the livestock farmers up there who need that spring water for livestock water. So I really appreciate that, and Merry Christmas to y'all.
Mr. Parker, thank you for being here, and we truly embrace that relationship with you all. Anything we can do in the future, you let us know. Director Carter?
Thank you, Chairman Cannon. First, let me say that I'm going to contact Cliff Walker of Orca and ask him to give his lifetime license back. But secondly, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We have mentioned to you several times about the coffee table book that the agency's putting together that should be coming out soon. We thought it would be out around Thanksgiving. Things beyond our control. Anyway, we have a firm date now of between December 20th and December the 22nd that will be here. So it's going to be tough to get those to people for Christmas. I want you to know, I think you'll be very pleased with them when it comes out. It's a little over 200 pages of what I think are very neat descriptions about places that we manage across the state and some of the things that our people do. So just mention that to you and look forward to that being here and hope that we can get that as another thing on the Christmas agenda and falling along that line. We always talk about TWRA family and the agency and staff, and the commission is most definitely a part of the TWRA family, obviously. We just want to say thank you for everything during this year. I know we'll see you again in January, but it'll be another new year. So thank you for everything this year, all the collaborative efforts that we've jointly gone forward with, all the successes you've put forward and things you've worked with us on. Wish you and your families a very Merry Christmas and the best in the new year. We appreciate it greatly. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Carter. Commissioner Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon. I just wanted to, we didn't mention it during this meeting, and I wanted to touch base with the agency on a thing that Commissioner Holbert brought up at the last meeting about the tagging and harvest tags and transport tags or whatever, and we just kind of like to see some kind of plan or thoughts that the agency had about moving forward with that. So I just wanted to bring that up while we were here. I'd like to be nice if we could see something in January.
Director Carter.
That's actually the plan. The committee has already met and discussed it in pretty in-depth from several different divisions within the agency, and we plan to do some presentation at the January meeting.
Thank you, Director.
Any other comments?
I've got something, if you let me have just a personal moment.
Time's up. Yes, sir, Commissioner Cox.
I missed the last meeting. I have, my younger son has been extremely ill, and he's much better now, but I want to take a moment to thank the commissioners and the agency people who call me and or text me or whatever with best wishes and prayers. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. And our prayers continue to be with the family and the son. Commissioner McMillan.
I just want to give a thumbs up to how nice this meeting room looks now. Good job, Mr. Cleveland. Looks great.
I'm glad he moved the fish off that wall. Somebody
Going once, going twice.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Receiving that, let me offer four brief thoughts, and then we will adjourn. Number one, as Commissioner Ripley has personally experienced through the fire, but all of us have experienced across the state, this is an unprecedented drought. And yet I've watched what our staff has done from one end of the state to the other. I was in Black Bayou last Tuesday. I got a report from John Gregory last night regarding Lick Creek. And our staff has worked so hard and been successful at creating opportunities for our hunting public to use those facilities literally across the state. Having to really manage how pumps are handled, the water levels, the whole 9 yards. And I have never seen these areas in better shape. So our collective hat is off to our staff and their extra effort during this drought season. Second is that we have transitioned to a new licensing agent, or whatever the proper term is, the branch system. They had a heck of a road to travel, particularly given the time of year that this was being implemented. And I am so pleased at the limited number and the types of comments that we have received. Anytime you do anything computer-wise, we're going to get complaints and it's going to be issues. They have been on top of it. So Michael, thank them for us. We know there's some work to be done and tying in the tagging system. I'm looking forward to that report. But I personally attest that they were working their tails off last week. I saw them in the same motel I was in, and they were talking about the system. Number 3, our next meeting. It will be a one-day meeting in Memphis at the Bass Pro Pyramid. It will be on Friday, January the 13th. It is going to be a good meeting in spite of it being on the 13th. And we, ma'am? And it is Commissioner Woodson's mom's birthday. I believe it's Connie King's birthday too, but we won't go there. It is your mom? Okay, well, happy birthday to her, my
Sure it is.
goodness. Let me close with something I think is appropriate for this season. And a good friend of mine wrote a book on Advent, and I probably didn't appreciate this until I read it. These are words from St. Francis of Assisi. And one of the things about St. Francis is, irregardless of what you believed or didn't believe, he was cherished by all, of all beliefs. And I think irregardless of what anybody here or on this tape believes, and by no means is this a time to try to sway that. That is not what this is about. But I believe his words are appropriate for all of us. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand rather than be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It's by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. My hope and prayer personally is that this holiday season, this Christmas season, regardless of what you believe, may it be one of rest, one of peace, and one of phenomenal blessings. With that, we'll consider this meeting adjourned.